And we are back. And we just finished watching 2006's Marie Antoinette, rated PG-13 with a runtime of 2 hours and 3 minutes. This is written and directed by Sofia Coppola. I think it's based on a book, a novel about the young Austrian princess who becomes ultimately the Queen of France. I'm going to go around the table and get impressions. I'm going to start with you. What did you think of the film?
This was garbage. This is absolute garbage. This is so boring. I can't imagine a more boring retelling of the Marie Antoinette story. Oh my God, this was torture to get through. Yeah. How long was this? This was
2 hours and 3 minutes. It felt
2
longer.
hours and 3 minutes. This felt like a week of my life. This was just,
I don't know about a week.
This was brutal. I mean, it was like an hour and 20 minutes in for like, I guess, the first aspect of the plot, her getting pregnant. Mm-hmm. And then just, I don't know what the hell was going on for the rest of it. It was just like, oh, look at us. We're rich.
Yeah.
We're rich and we're bored.
Okay, so we know the gist of this story. What could have made this telling of the story more interesting?
A better writer, a better sense of pacing, better anything. It was just boring. There was long stretches of just repeated scenes of boredom. Just her feeling like a fish out of water, her just not hooking up with the king, her deciding, oh, whatever, I'm just going to start drinking and gambling and having fun. And then that again, and then that again, and then that again. For an hour and a half.
Yeah, I wasn't clear. Like, was I supposed to be sympathetic towards her? Like, I couldn't.
I didn't feel any sympathy towards her, and like it wasn't like even like afterwards. Oh, they finally get together. It wasn't like it was some sort of like, oh, he's awkward and she's gonna bust him out of his shell or something or there was any. I understand it's a historical drama, but they were not playing.
I mean, this wasn't
playing by the rules of historical dramas.
Yeah.
They're playing modern music with it, and it's just terrible. It was just awful. It was like, I feel like during this time period, like the early 2000s, it was like, oh, let's make historical dramas with modern music.
Yeah.
And maybe be a little bit more lighthearted and less stuffy, like a period piece, but fun.
And edgy.
And
cool.
edgier and cool. And this just was trying to follow that mold and just failed brutally.
Well, I don't think it failed brutally in that aspect. I think it failed brutally in the aspect of keeping me entertained. I think it failed in the aspect of, why should I sympathize with this character? This is based on a biography, Marie Antoinette, The Journey, by Lady Antonia Fraser, which apparently was a award-winning book. I mean, if you want to speak to me, if you want to speak to a younger generation, this is PG-13, so I'm assuming that the audience that they're looking for here is younger and
obviously
hipper
with the music choices they made.
Right. So what about this film would have been interesting to that core audience that you're looking for? I don't know. I mean, maybe the soundtrack, maybe the pretty frocks, maybe this whole...
There was nothing really pretty about the outfits. They were period outfits. They were wearing...
Fair enough, but I think for someone who's studying like fashion design or historical costuming, stuff like that, this might be something that they would be interested in. But as far as storytelling, I'm with you 100%. I didn't find anything about the story compelling. The performances were just nobody wowed me. You know, sometimes when you watch a film, there's a character or an actor that really pulls you in. I didn't feel that at all in this film.
Kirsten Dunst. Yeah, she was not interesting at all.
No.
She didn't add anything to this
performance. And she's the main character. The film is based on her.
I didn't feel sad for her. I didn't feel any emotion. It was just sort of like, she's like, okay, I'm here. I guess I'm supposed to get pregnant now. It's not happening.
Right, and even
hour and a half later.
Even in the scenes of, like, for example, when the other couple has the baby before she does, and she locks herself in the room
and
she's crying. Like, I didn't feel anything for her. I couldn't care less. I never connected with her. And it's interesting because you want to connect with your main character.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like you do at all in this film. No. I feel like as far as filmmaking, it's okay. I think there's some really beautiful shots in here. I think there's amazing shots of food porn. I think there's really pretty historically accurate costumes.
Sorry. Food porn?
When they're showing like all the plates of delicious pastries and cakes and cookies and stuff, it was just that part was nice, I guess.
Not a big fan of French pastry, so didn't do nothing for me.
All right. Well, I mean,
let's take as many things as we can and make them look like balls.
Easy.
Well, that just happened.
And I think there's sequences of shots that are pretty, like, but as a whole product, I think this film falls short.
I didn't think it was filmed very nicely either.
Really?
I found the shots kind of dull, and it wasn't like as though they were very... I mean, I'm guessing it was supposed to be colorful, but it wasn't really that colorful. There was like asides to random things that never really went anywhere, like the King's Mistress. What the hell was the point of all that? There was absolutely no point of it. I thought maybe, the King's Mistress is like this hot-to-trot lady who's clearly having tons of sex with the king. Mm. Maybe she like speaks to Marie Antoinette and gives her some advice or something. But there was... That literally went nowhere. Right. Absolutely went nowhere. And for a while there, I thought the general guy was just another loose plot point that was going to go nowhere. And then it comes back, and then, it does sort of go nowhere. It wasn't even like, is he the real father of the thing? They spanned it out so far that, no, I don't think so. And then she's like staring out a window or into a closet. I don't even know what the hell she was looking at. And she's just imagining him like rearing back on his horse with an explosion going off behind him. And it's just, I want to be excused. And what does she do? Plops on her bed. And then we get like this sort of like fading montage of her just laying on her bed smiling for 5 minutes or whatever.
Yeah.
So many things were just like shown and just went absolutely nowhere. And then you wasted so much time. She had a third baby, and the only reason why she had a third baby was, we hung up a painting of the family with the third baby. We took it down, and now we're hanging up a portrait with just the 2 kids.
Right. Which you didn't even notice.
I didn't even notice that there was a third baby in the thing. It was just a mess. And then there's the portrait of her with like a sort of like ripped in the middle with like random
getting France into debt.
Slogans. She's putting us into debt. To me, that was just like student film. We have 15 minutes to tell a story. Let's just cram it out as quickly as we possibly can. Meanwhile, you've wasted an hour and a half of her just like doing nothing but like walking through big fancy hallways, eating pastry, giggling, and then laying in a bed with Jason Schwartzman where nothing happens. Not that I really want to see that anyway. But it's like you wasted a significant portion of this movie on this plot point. And then it happens, and then we still have 40 minutes to go.
Yeah. I think like the first time we paused this film, it was 36 minutes in, and it felt longer than that.
Oh my God, I was so upset when it said only like 36 minutes. I thought we had gone through an hour or something.
At least, right?
It really felt like it.
Yeah. And then we paused it another time, and I think it was 40 minutes left or something like that. And then the last time we paused it was like 16 minutes, right?
Yeah.
And we were like, let's just plow through this. Let's just plow through this.
And I gotta be honest, I don't know what I'm supposed to feel on my...
Yeah.
I don't know, like, historically speaking, all I know about Marie Antoinette is she gets killed. She gets her head chopped off during the French Revolution. Mm-hmm. She gets executed. I don't know, were we supposed to feel sympathy for her? Was she supposed to be some sort of like secret reformer that was misunderstood? No. There's no story about exactly who she is or what made her special or anything.
Right.
I don't see her like, I have an idea. I'm going to do this. Or like, she started a new fashion trend with giant hair pieces. They blow through that in one scene.
Yeah.
So that clearly wasn't a major thing. Why should I give a crap about Marie Antoinette other than the fact that she was the Queen of France and she got killed?
The other big thing that's sort of addressed, but again, like you said, is sort of glossed over, the famous line of "Let them eat cake."
Let them eat cake. Oh, I never said that.
Oh, I never said
Moving
that.
on.
And how does she's like, I won't even dignify it with a response. So it's like, so she let this lie perpetuate itself. Meanwhile, they lived in absolute luxury without any thought to the people that they taxed that were doing the living and dying.
That's the thing. So she's not doing anything that makes me admire or like her. If you're going to make a movie about it, okay, well then give me a reason to hate her, really.
Right.
And they didn't even do that because she was so placid and I'm just kind of bored. It wasn't even like her boredom led to cruelty or anything.
No.
It was just, oh, look, I have my own little secret farm. Look, I'm feeding a baby goat and I have a beautiful daughter that I play with and I invite friends over and we have a good time. It wasn't like Mel Brooks shooting peasants and going, it's good to be the king. At least then you get a little laugh out of it.
Right.
This was just, what am I supposed to feel for this? I can't even feel sad for her.
Right. I mean, I'd be curious. I mean, I don't have time to read, but I'd be curious to know what exactly the book was about, only because something about that book spoke to Sofia Coppola to do this movie. And I mean, I feel like a lot was invested in this movie. A lot of time, a lot of resources, a lot of research. I mean, those dresses didn't make themselves, obviously. Obviously, somebody had to go and figure out what was worn. I mean, it felt very historically accurate. The soundtrack? No. Agreed. But everything else about the film felt very historically accurate to the time. Except for the American accents, right? So
they, you know what? I thought was okay because
that didn't bother me.
If you're gonna do a film, you got to go one of two ways. Either everybody's doing an accent,
right,
or nobody is, and we just sort of gloss over that fact and ignore it. They went the second route and they stuck to it, and that was fine.
Yes, it didn't bother me.
It would have been really weird if Kirsten Dunst is trying to do especially Rip Torn.
I would have loved to have heard that. What that would have sounded like.
Or Jason Schwartzman. if he would have done it, you would have thought you were in a straight up comedy.
Sure.
You know what?
Sure.
Maybe they should have and just made this a straight up comedy.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like for a film that obviously a lot of thought was put into it.
I don't know.
I feel like a lot of thought was put into it.
It didn't feel like that way to me. This felt like we're making a film by the seat of our pants here. We have a lot of money. We have a lot of sets. We have a lot of costumes. But this did not feel like somebody wrote a solid script and was like, everybody was like, yeah, this is fantastic.
I disagree. I feel like the intention here was to make Marie Antoinette more consumable to the masses. But the problem here is you don't have a compelling character. You have sort of a weak script, and it's unfortunate because this is the main character and I don't feel anything for her.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying I don't feel like this was
But I feel like
a solid story. To me, this felt like I have an outline of a movie and I'm just going to film a lot of random stuff and we'll put it together and see what we have at the end.
All right. Gee, what did you think of this film?
It was boring and I hated it.
What could have made it better for you?
Them not making it.
Well, ultimately, don't.
Does this make you more or less interested in Marie Antoinette?
Less. Literally, I was like, I've listened to, because I listened to this podcast a while ago regarding her, and I thought it was interesting, and this movie is not interesting in the slightest.
What was interesting on the podcast?
I don't know. I just like hearing about historical people. And like,
isn't that the Royals thing? That's a good one. We should link that in the blurb.
What is it?
Noble Blood.
Noble Blood, yeah.
The first episode's about Marie Antoinette. And yeah, this one, although it's like historically accurate in some bits, I just didn't like it. Like, I didn't like it.
What could have made it better for you?
I didn't want to see this movie.
Well, all right, fair enough. Did you find any redeemable things about this film, whether it was the costuming or the soundtrack or the cinematography? Did you find any of that?
No.
Or just the length and the boredom
This was so
just
boring
killed
that
everything
it
else.
ruined everything. Like, the only good thing about this movie was that I laughed at the fact that, like, all those nobles were watching them get into bed because it was literally so embarrassing.
Yeah.
That was the only funny bit.
Yeah.
I hated the rest of this movie.
Fair enough. Olive G, what did you think of this film?
This movie was dog water.
Dog water.
You sound like an old English
Yeah.
aristocrat.
Yeah. What was so dog water-ish about it?
It was horrible. What was the point of making this movie?
I don't know.
Why?
Did you like Marie Antoinette?
No, she was awful. She cheated on her husband with some guy.
Yeah.
Like, why?
Did you like Mops the dog?
He probably died.
Another just useless plot point.
Yeah, what the hell? Just don't bring the dog into it.
Once Mops left the movie, I was checked out. Poor
Mops.
You know what? I would have rather have seen
Mops'
what
journey.
happened to Mops after he left Marie Antoinette.
Oh God, that would have been
That would have been an
infinitely
amazing
times
movie.
more interesting.
It would have been
than this.
hilarious if he is like in the mob watching her just get carted away and beheaded, and like he's like barking, "You left me."
That's what you get.
That's what you get.
Oh my God.
Did you?
That's the movie I want to see.
Did you find the fashions interesting at all?
I guess they're interesting. I found some of the stuff they wore cool.
Yeah. Did you like the wigs?
The wigs were horrible. Oh my God.
You didn't like the one where she had a boat, like on the top of her head?
Well, I like the boat, but I don't think that was a wig. I think that was actual hair.
No, that was a wig.
No, that was
Really?
a wig.
Yeah.
Look how tall her hair was.
Yeah.
All of her hair. Her hair was a wig through, I would say, 90% of that movie.
Or 80 maybe. 80.
Well, I like the one where she like put boat in her hair, and I also like the one where like she put like
birds?
little birds.
Yeah.
To make her look
They
like a
look like
bird.
Marge Simpson with birds.
It's just crazy.
Yeah.
The ridiculous hair.
I like those too.
Okay. At one point, she had dyed her hair pink. I think
She
when she
did?
was coming back from her little villa, her little private villa.
I don't know. This was just,
Some of the frocks in here were pleasing to the eye. I think the color palette, it's very like,
I liked a little bit of the color palette.
yeah, it's very Easter.
But like,
kind of.
I think like she was a horrible queen, along with the king, because they're supplying the U.S. even though they needed to afford food for all the people.
Right.
Like, hello, stupid, stop doing this. You know, you don't need to stick up to England all the time. You know, the sake of your country
they wanted to
is
show
at
up-
line.
they
You know,
wanted-
the revolution is at hand. This could start a revolution against the...
You know what? I'm glad you brought that up, Olive. So Olive brings up a good point. So the king, played by Jason Schwartzman, is kind of an interesting character because it's almost like he's like an accidental king. He certainly didn't want the crown.
He
No,
literally
he
said,
just
like,
wanted to play.
before the scene that he got crowned, he's like, God, please have mercy on us. We are way too young to be crowned.
Right. So he didn't know what he was doing. And it seemed like even in the bedchamber, he didn't know what he was doing until his brother-in-law basically gave him like the talk, which was pretty hilarious.
That was embarrassing.
no idea what
He had
to
to
do.
give him a talk to tell him
Kinda
to screw
spell
his
it out.
sister.
Probably thought its babies came from storks.
Yeah. So, I mean,
Or the
so you...
Cabbage Patch.
Oh, the cabbage patch.
Oh my God.
So that's an interesting, because I don't really remember being taught the French Revolution. I know I've read about it and I've had my own preconceived notions. I'm not a big history person, but I always felt like the king was different. And the way he's portrayed here is kind of interesting because he's sort of like, he's not an aggressive person. He's not a...
They're not cruel.
They're not
None
cruel.
of them are cruel. And I think that's what the problem is, in that you can't care about these people one way or the other. They're not nice or beneficial or
helpful or kind.
To anybody. They just sort of like, oh, well,
Exist.
this is how things are. Let's go have tea on the lawn
Yeah.
and go hunting every day. So you're not really seeing them take a stand on anything, really. Either be good and make me want to feel sympathy for this person,
or be a shit,
or be a total bastard. Yeah. And be like, I'm gonna be so happy when this guy gets his comeuppance. That's satisfying. This wasn't satisfying at all. It was just sort of like, I guess they should have done more for the. I mean, yeah, they were the rulers. They should have done more for the people. But even then, you don't see any kind of suffering or anything like that. You just hear about it, and it's like, literally, it was like what? The French Revolution was literally the last 15 minutes of this movie.
Maybe less.
Maybe less.
Yeah.
It was like, we're having tea. Oh, the Bastille's been broken into. And then suddenly there's a mob outside the castle, and like, what the hell was that? She like lowers her head and everybody gets quiet.
Yeah.
Like suddenly they were going like, maybe this isn't so, maybe she's not so bad.
I don't know.
And then finally somebody was just like, wait a minute, Vive la France! And everybody's waving pitchforks again.
So yeah, I don't know. I don't know what could have made this better.
Nothing. They shouldn't have made it. This was just a garbage movie. This was flat out garbage from beginning to end. Nobody made this an amazing performance. It wasn't like Kirsten Dunst knocked it out of the park with a role, or Jason Schwartzman was fascinating as the king, or Steve Coogan was hilarious as, I don't even know what the hell Steve Coogan's job was.
He was like an advisor.
He would appear when the queen needed to know something.
Yeah.
He was like Mr. Exposition or something.
Her
relationship with her mother was like touched on a couple of times. You could have made a movie about that. Her friends, who the hell were? I didn't even get a name for the girl that was there the longest, the one that looked like Evan Rachel Wood. Who the hell was it? She laughed at her joke, or laughed at that old lady that looked like
the one that was
Dracula in the beginning of the movie.
I think they did say her name, but I just wasn't really paying attention. I think that if they had focused more on her being this kind of fish out of water, like if they had gone from the beginning, I found the beginning sequence interesting about how she has to leave.
Yeah, and
then
you get introduced
to France and be the sovereign over there, or the lady
sovereign to be,
right? So that part of the story was interesting. I think the whole like, she's got to get pregnant thing, like that went on a little too much. I think instead of, I mean, you could have done hints of it here and there, but I think focusing more on the fact that she really was a foreigner. I mean, there were hints of it there, like where people were like, she's Austrian and those people and stuff like that. Like, focus more on that. And I agree with you. Make her sympathetic, but I think the proper thing would have been to just do a 360 and then make her the villain, where she becomes this loathsome character because of the neglect,
the abuse that's heaped on her,
and the abuse that she's gone through.
Yeah, but that's like one of the things that like is also I consider just them dropping. They introduce all of these characters. That lady in the beginning, the one that first meets her, who takes the dog away.
Yeah.
She disappears
for a long time. Yeah.
No, but like halfway through, she's just gone. Yeah. And then Molly Shannon and that lady that's
the other woman.
Like this.
Yeah.
That lady. Suddenly they're just not characters anymore.
Yeah.
It's like, why? Where did these people go, and how were they gotten rid of? If they were gotten rid of, show me that.
Yeah.
Show me how because suddenly it's just she's just accepted. Mm-hmm. Like in the beginning, it's like everybody's like staring at her. They're looking at her like she's like some weirdo.
That was weird because like she was accepted, and then like later, like it's even after she gives birth to a son, where they're just like, okay, you're not cool anymore.
Right. There's that scene where initially she claps, and then everyone follows her lead, but then later on she claps, and everyone's looking at her like, what are you doing?
Well, you'd think it'd be the other way around because she'd given birth to a. What was that about?
I think
that's why I feel like this film was just
it failed.
It failed, but that it really felt like they were just doing it. They were just pulling stuff out of their asses. They were making it. It did not feel like a coherent plot that had a character arc and a story arc. It just felt like we're just going to throw these random bits in out of context and edit it together and see what comes out of it. To me, it felt like at the end of it all, when they were done filming it, they realized they had like 18 hours of footage of her walking around not being pregnant. And they were like, well, I guess the film has to be mostly about this. And they just totally forgot, oh, wait a minute. We're also doing that plot where she's trying to be accepted in this new location, this fish out of water story, abandoned. We don't have enough footage of that. Oh, just forget about it. Oh, wait, there's the romance with the general. Oh, okay, well, we got a couple of hours of decent footage of that. We could throw that in there.
Yeah.
It just really just felt like a hodgepodge of stuff dumped, and at the end of it all, it was just like, oh, here it is. We'll just ride on Sofia Coppola's name and whatnot. She did a real good job with Lost in Translation. People will go see this.
Right.
And, let's throw in some popular music, which just completely out of place.
Yeah, it's funny because I feel like in some projects it works, and then in others it didn't. Here it didn't bother me as much, but I feel like
it works better. I feel it works better when you're dealing with something that's like a comedy,
possibly
like A Knight's Tale.
Possibly,
which was
yes.
also one of those, it takes place in olden night times, but they're basically singing We Are the Champions. You know? Right.
Before, I have a question for everyone. Would you rather watch this movie again or that Gospel by Andre movie?
I would probably watch this again. The Gospel, that movie was just dreadful. That was also meandering nonsense.
But
I think the other one's
shorter.
Yeah.
Oh, it is shorter.
Yeah, it's like an hour and 30
So I watched
minutes.
that.
Or hour and 20 minutes.
They both felt so long.
Yeah.
They did.
I don't know. Am I allowed to sleep through them? Or do I have to watch them?
Yes.
If I could sleep through them, I guess I would watch Andre again just because it's shorter.
Yeah. I think that the intention here was to make Marie Antoinette accessible to a younger audience, and definitely a lot of the visuals, a lot of the music choices, I think a lot of the casting choices might appeal to a younger audience. Unfortunately, the story is just not interesting enough. And I think that, again, if you don't have an interesting story, you don't have an interesting film. So I think that this did not really, I don't think it did well, right?
If I remember right, it was a critical and commercial failure.
Yeah. Let me see. According to IMDb, the estimated budget on this film was $40 million. The opening weekend in October 2006 in U.S. and Canada was $5,361,050. The U.S. gross in U.S. and Canada was only $15,962,471. However, the worldwide gross on this was $60,917,189. So it did. I think historically films have to do double their budget to be considered successful. This did a little bit more than its original budget. I don't think it's considered a success. I don't think it's considered a total failure, but I think that unfortunately,
what did people say about it? Do you know?
What do you mean?
Like critic, how was it? How was it?
Are there any reviews on IMDb?
There are. It netted a 6.5 out of 10. I don't know that I would give this movie a 6. If I'm gonna give it a number from 1 to 10, I would probably give it a 5, and that's kind of being generous. I think there were things about the film that worked.
Are you sure? I'm giving this a 3. This was a bad movie.
Some people liked it. I think that there were elements of it that were interesting. Again, the costuming was really well done. The soundtrack was interesting. There was aspects of the cinematography that I found really lovely. Unfortunately, the story itself, and by extension the performances, were very lackluster.
No, it won the Oscar for costume design.
As it should have, I think. This movie, the costumings, there was a lot of thought put into that. As someone who went to fashion school, who studied sewing, I understand the mechanics of that. And some of the frocks in this were unreal. Like, just the detail of the work that went into it. And very, very much historically accurate. So from that vantage point, if you're like a fashion historian or a lover of costumes, period pieces, like from that aspect, I think you can enjoy this film. As far as storytelling, it's very lukewarm to say the least. So I'm going to give it a 5. You said a 3?
A 3, yes.
G, 1 to 10.
I am going to give this a 2 because I hated it. But the beginning, I feel like a completely different person from the beginning of the movie. It felt like that long.
Yeah.
Before.
Olive G.
1.
Jeez.
1, 2, 3. I should have put 4, but
yeah,
I'm
you
gonna give
ruined
it. I'm going to give it a 5. I think
ruined
that
it.
it wasn't a good storytelling experience, but I think that parts of the production itself were good. And I think that, listen, she had to have hired cast and crew. People got paid. This is on people's resumes. So good on that. But as far as a storytelling experience, it was very, very lackluster. Very lackluster.
Here's one interesting bit of trivia. There's a scene towards the end of the movie shows many princes and princesses of blood saying farewell to the queen before fleeing the country, including her 2 favorite companions, the ones whose name I could not remember. The Duchess de Polignac and the Princess de Lamballe, I guess. The real Duchess de whatever did take refuge in Switzerland. Princess de Lamballe did initially leave the royal family for safety in England, but returned later at the request of Marie Antoinette after she and her family were caught trying to escape. She remained with the royal family until her own arrest. After refusing to sign an oath renouncing the monarchy, she was mutilated and beheaded, and her head was mounted on a pike and paraded past the prison window of the doomed queen.
Yeah, I know that Dana lady.
That's the Rose Byrne character.
That was Rose Byrne. She was the Princess de Lamballe? Or
Oh, no, wait. I think that was... No, I think Rose Byrne was the Duchess. I think the other girl that was with her from the beginning.
One that looked like Evan Rachel Wood.
Yeah.
Okay. So there you go. She got mutilated and beheaded.
Yeah, like they put it.
What was up with these people? Just leave.
Yeah,
You're
never
rich.
come back. Yeah.
It's not like as though you have just leave.
Yeah.
That's the one thing. I'm going to stay here. Oh, you could move to a more secure location. Yeah, I'm going to stay here.
Yeah.
Oh, and I'm going to keep my kids here too. This mob of bloodthirsty peasants is coming to
I know,
take me away.
I mean, and it's funny because at the end, like, I realized it always felt like the Marie Antoinette character always loved the king or Louis, right?
That's another thing. It was like, did she love him, or did she
think
just sort of
so.
think he's a nice guy? I never got the impression they were in love.
I don't know about in love, but I think that she had affection for him. Remember when she's coming to the what was it? The handoff? What would they call it?
I think it was called
Handover.
the handover.
Yeah. Which was like, that was the first jarring thing about this film, which I'm sure it's historically accurate. But anyway, when they're in the carriage, when she's with her Austrian ladies of waiting and she's showing the picture of Louis, oh, he has kind eyes. I think that in her, because I think I read that she was 14 when she's handed off. So, I mean, what do you know at 14? You know what I mean? Like, you haven't really lived a life at 14.
Especially a princess at 14.
Right, who's been sequestered and
her
lived
for
exactly. So she has no concept of pain and suffering, of the daily grind. She is living in a glass castle her whole life, right? Yeah. So this guy who is going to be the future king of France, like, she's got stars in her eyes, like, oh, I'm going to marry.
Yeah, at least he wasn't fat and old and covered with pimples.
Exactly, but still, what I was going to say was that she always seemed to have affection for him. Like, she was ready. She was always ready to be his bride. Mm-hmm. He's the one that sort of dragged his feet about consummating the relationship. And I think that...
Apparently had no idea how to do it.
And I think that at the end, when Louis decides, I won't be a fugitive king, I'm going to stand my ground, and she says, my place is with my husband, I think that she genuinely felt loyalty to him. I don't know if it was love, but I think that it was the sense of loyalty. He is the father of her children. He is the king of France. He is her husband. Do they have some grand, passionate romance? No, because she was willing to have an affair with the general, right? So, but I think that she did have affection for Louis. And I think at the end, in the carriage ride, it's almost not like he's seeing her for the first time, but it's almost like he appreciates her. There's something in his eyes that it seems like he appreciates her.
I think,
for being
like I said,
there.
I think that they liked each other. I don't think that they were in love with each other. I just think that they liked each other, and by circumstance, they're there, and that's the duty of them to remain with each other, and obviously not embarrass each other. I mean, she was discreet with her affair. Who knows what he was doing?
What the hell you mean? They were literally doing that in broad daylight.
She had an entire estate
Villa,
that was her own. It was
Yeah.
like they may have been on.
And I'm
They
sure,
may as well have been on an
imagine
island.
Imagine if that informant guy had come to find her one of those times.
He would have probably kept his mouth shut.
Yeah. I mean, she had a staff there, and they obviously were loyal to her and kept their mouths shut
Man.
because it could have been a whole big scandal.
Whatever. This film gets a 3. It was a bad movie.
All right. It wasn't a good storytelling experience. I think there were technical aspects of the film that worked. Again, it won an Oscar for costuming, as I think it should have. I don't know what else was nominated that year, but the design work on those dresses were pretty spectacular. Yeah. So, okay, I think unfortunately this is probably a miss. It's too bad because
Absolutely a miss. Do not waste your time with this movie.
Oh my God. Never watch this movie.
go see Paddington 2 instead,
Go see Paddington 2.
which is far, far superior. But I think that if you are interested in history...
Don't watch this either. No, this is not...
No. Can I finish my thought? Jesus.
All right, go ahead.
If you are interested in history... maybe tune into Noble Blood and stuff like that, and to get a better idea of.
Definitely listen to that. I love that podcast.
Yeah, we'll put it in the blurb, and just do your own research. Again, I think we mentioned this in the previous podcast. In the year of our Lord 2023, and in light of Google. Yes, in light of Google being a thing, there is no reason for anyone to be ignorant. If you are so inclined and you want to know about the French Revolution, about Marie Antoinette, about Louis, about her children, what exactly transpired, who the players are, more about just that time period, Google it and find out on your own and be enlightened. I think that it's an interesting part of world history, how this revolution started because the have-nots were tired of being the dirt under the sole of the monarchs and the upper classes. They went from being a monarchy to being a republic. That is the exact moment that this happened in French history. Yeah. So there are resources if you are interested in history. Go check them out. Again, this is definitely a pass. And that is it from us. And we will. Oh, wait. Do we even mention where we saw this? We saw it on MGM/Epix.
Yeah.
It still comes
Do
up as
not
Epix.
watch this. Just don't.
We saw this
Just
on.
end this.
Leave.
Yeah, we saw this on the Epix app. It's now MGM Plus. I'm sure if you looked on your TV, you can get MGM Plus.
Why haven't they transitioned it on the...
Because they're lazy.
Okay.
They're just lazy.
Let's just wrap this up, please.
All right. And that's it from us. And we will bid you all a
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
good night.
Please do not watch this movie.